Awesome.
Oh,
Is somebody going to give me a, are we good
yeah,
now? Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was waiting for somebody to say, are we good? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the community classroom here at Michael's. My name is Marley Bird, and I will be your teacher and friend today online. I'm excited to grab a pair of knitting needles and some Lily Sugar and Cream yarn and show you how to make a fun dishcloth. Don't be shy. Come on in. Say hello in the chat room. You'll notice that I have my friend Allie here moderating. She'll be able to answer questions and provide links and such throughout the way as I'm showing you how to knit a fun dishcloth project. I would love to know where everybody is calling in from, or joining us from, I should say. So in the chat, just say hello and say, hey, I'm calling in from so-and-so. I am in Indiana, I almost said Colorado, Fishers, Indiana. And it is a dreary day here. So it is nice to be here in the studio, picking up some yarn and needles and knitting along with all of you. Oh, there's so many of you here. Welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I love that Michael's is doing this community online learning opportunity. So that way we can all connect with one another through our love of craft, whether it's knitting and crochet, or maybe it's scrapbooking, or whatever it may be, and whatever your cup of tea is. Hopefully we have something here ready for you. I know that besides crafting, there's been a lot of people cooking and baking. I know that there's a lot of cake baking stuff happening also, but for me, I've spent a lot of time here in the studio filming videos and tutorials and writing patterns, and it's a nice time. Hello to everybody. Let's see here. We have Lolly from Alabama. We have Mary from Carmel, Indiana. Hey, that's just right up the road. We have Carol from Bridgewater, New Jersey. So many of you from all around the country. Welcome, welcome. I'm curious how many of you are experienced knitters or new knitters, or maybe you're just like, hey, I thought this looked like fun. I'm just going to come and hang out and sip my tea and see what's going on. Just let me know what's happening with you. I am an experienced knitter. So let me kind of tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Marley Bird. I am a YouTube instructor and host, a stitch ambassador for Yarnspirations. I'm a knitwear and crochet designer. I've written several books with Leisure Arts. I'm also one of the authors of the Knitting for Dummies series. And I have been on the Knit and Crochet Now PBS television show. I mean, you kind of name it, I've done it. I'm also a mom to 3 kids and a wife to one very understanding husband who didn't even bat an eye when I filled up my 22-foot long Penske truck with all of my yarn. And I'm not even joking. I have that much yarn. It's crazy. So I know a lot of you out there can relate. All of the stash that you have collected over the years, whether you go to Michael's, walking down those yarn aisles, and it's like candy, right? You see all the beautiful yarn on the shelves and you just grab it and it magically works its way into your cart. And then the next thing you know, it's at home ready for you to play with. And so I'm excited to play with some of that yarn today with all of you. So if you want to join me as I am knitting along, I would love that. We have a free pattern we will be following along. I know Allie has provided a link to the pattern in the chat room, and I'm sure she'll do that again, but this is a free pattern from Yarnspirations. It's called the Textured Knit Dishcloth. And if you can knit and purl, you can make this dishcloth. It's a little step up from just a plain garter stitch knit dishcloth. And we're gonna combine some knits and purls in the body of the fabric to create some really beautiful texture. Along with the free pattern, you will need 1 ball of Lily Sugar and Cream yarn. Really fun. I know I have a lot of this yarn in my stash. And you will need a pair of size 7 knitting needles. I prefer to use straight needles when I am working on dishcloths. Just personal preference. And I'm also going to mention that I prefer working with metal needles when I am working with cotton yarn. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we are working together. So if you have the free pattern, go ahead and get that free pattern, grab your ball of yarn and your knitting needles, and you can join me as I'm working along. Just so you know, as I mentioned, Allie is here to have your questions asked to me as I'm showing you how to knit. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask your question in the chat. Allie can say, hey, Marley, we have a question, and hopefully I'll be able to
Hey,
answer it.
Marley. Nancy wants to know if she only has a size 5 or an 8.
So if she's using the worsted weight yarn, this one, I would actually go with the size 8, I think. I would not go with the size 5. And because we're making dishcloths, gauge is not going to be a huge concern here. But I know that when I finished my sample dishcloth, I had enough yarn left over that I think she would be totally fine going with a size 8 knitting needle. Okay, do you guys want to see? This is what we're making. This is my sample of the dishcloth. You can see, hopefully, the texture there on the front of the fabric. On the back, it just looks like reverse stockinette, quite honestly. And it's a nice big dishcloth. If you're like me, I like big dishcloths that I can scrunch up and really scrub at things. So this is a great dishcloth. All right, Allie, are you good?
Yeah, we're so a couple people here just asking for the pattern. Everyone, if you I've shared it a couple times. If you are having trouble finding it in the chat, just let me know and I will I'll send you the link again.
Okay.
I did just want to let you know kind of what the skill levels were looking like.
Sure.
There was a decent amount of beginners, a lot of like advanced beginner. We definitely saw some advanced beginners. There's also some advanced, and they just said they kind of want to hang out. And they're just looking for some company while they're stitching today.
Welcome. I am quite the extrovert and I love the company. So please join me. Okay, so I love beginners. I love adventurous beginners and I love experience. So we are good there. If you're ready to jump in with the pattern, I'm ready as well. So I can switch to my camera view. I do want to give a little side note that the camera will be vertical because that's just the way it has to be. But I've positioned it in a way that I think you can easily see my hands. So hopefully we will be good to go. Are you guys ready? Yes? Everybody, yes? All right, cool.
I think we should give everyone another minute or so to download the pattern.
Okay.
Just a couple additional people looking for the pattern. So
okay.
I just want to make sure they all have a chance to do that download here.
That totally works. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at this while they're getting that pattern. And I'm going to move my microphone over here a little bit. Hopefully you can still hear me. Sound still good?
Yeah. Sounds great, Marley.
Perfect. All right, so this will be a little bit closer up view of the actual dishcloth. So this is the textured knit dishcloth, and what makes it textured, I'll use a knitting needle to show you. You can see I have these nice little purl bumps that are spaced out evenly along the section. So we have purl bumps here, and then when we get to a different part of the pattern, they shift and it's almost like a checkerboard. They go from being here, and so they go between those sections. Can you see that? So this entire portion of the dishcloth is the repeat. These 12 rows are the repeat. So then you repeat those 12 rows, then you repeat those 12 rows, and then you keep going until you hit about 8 inches. And so you have a decision. You either can go until it's about 8 inches, and you just want to make sure you end after a row 6 or a row 12. And so I finished after a row 6, actually. And you can see here that the dishcloth is bordered with garter stitch, which just means knitting every single row. So we have garter stitch at the bottom, garter stitch along the sides, and then garter stitch up at the top, which makes it so that the stockinette portion in the center of the dishcloth will not roll in on itself. I know that many beginners don't really understand that if you just do plain stockinette over several rows, it'll start to curl in on itself. And that's just the nature of stockinette. So you have to have these border stitches here to maintain control of that stockinette stitch. So that's why those border stitches are there. And conveniently, they're already built into the pattern, so we don't have to do anything extra for those border stitches. All right, how are we looking, Allie?
We are looking pretty good.
Okay.
I think we're doing good. Yeah.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, we're using Lily Sugar and Cream. This stuff, I mean, even before I worked with Yarn Inspirations, you guys, to me, this was always the go-to dishcloth yarn. Like, I love this yarn for dishcloths. I've used it for years and years and years. There are many different colors available at Michael's. You can check them all out. I know that there will be links provided. You could go with lighter shades. You could go with neutral shades. You could go with darker shades. So my dishcloth here was done with a darker shade. Obviously, this is lighter. The swatch we will be working on for a while will be a little bit lighter in this kind of purple color. I do want to mention that as you finish your dishcloths, especially with the darker colors, I highly recommend washing them and drying them before you give them away as a gift or before you use them, just because sometimes the darker colors, the color itself could come off just a little bit. You just want to make sure that everything's good. It's not that it's going to dye something else. It just makes it so that you aren't going to have any issues. So I always try and wash and dry my projects or before I give them away. So I will recommend doing that. Okay, so this is the dishcloth. We will be starting off right down here with our cast on row. And as far as the cast on we will choose, you can use any cast on you are comfortable with. I prefer the long tail cast on, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. But if you have a different cast on you like to do, feel free to do that. We want to make sure first off that we have a long enough tail to accommodate the total number of stitches we will be casting on, which is 42. If you want to do a different stitch multiple, the multiple for this particular pattern is 6 plus 12, and that will give you those garter stitches on the outside and then the pattern stitches in the body of your fabric. So I'm going to be using a smaller number today for the video. I've placed a slip knot on my knitting needle, and I am using double pointed needles just for the video, so that way I don't have needles banging around all the time. But you can use straight needles. You don't have to use double points. I'm simply doing it for the video. Once you get your slip knot on your needle, you want to have the tail yarn wrapped around your thumb and your working yarn coming from the ball of the yarn over your finger. And you'll see you kind of have a slingshot. Can you see that? You're going to take your needle and starting down here at the bottom of your thumb, you go up the thumb, swivel over here to the tip of your finger, go down your finger. You'll notice there is like a window right here created with your thumb. Swing that needle right through that window, let your thumb come off, and as you pull those legs, that stitch tightens up. And you do not want that stitch to tighten up super tight because it'll be very difficult to get into it. So you want to do that 42 times. And again, if you have a different cast on method you prefer, go ahead and do that. But this is one of my favorite cast on methods. And I'm going to stop talking here for a minute so that way I can count. So Allie, if there are any questions, let me know. And I think I just did 24. Take a minute when you get all of your stitches cast on to count and make sure you have the correct number, because you don't want to get through the first 10 rows and all of a sudden find a multiple of 6 plus 12. All right. Once you have those stitches cast on, the instructions tell us we're supposed to then knit 9 rows.
Hey,
And
Marley, could you go over how to cast on again?
With the long tail?
Some people were just there's some beginners here that are just having trouble following. They could use it a little bit slower.
Okay, I could do that. So we're here again. I could just cast on a couple more here. So I want to have the tail over my thumb, the working yarn over my finger. And once I hit this position, I'll take my needle, go at the bottom of my thumb, go up my thumb, tip of my finger, come down my finger, and then I will swivel my needle through that window and off. Do you want me to show another cast on method for people who might not like the long tail? I could do that. Let me do that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
I could show on another one. So, I mean, that's not a problem. All right, so I'm just grabbing another yarn here, you guys. And for this one, I don't have to worry about the length of my tail. So I can just make my slip knot, place it on my needle. And for this one, we're gonna do a knitted cast on. So we have our slip knot on our needle. We take our other needle, you go into the stitch you put on, take your working yarn, wrap it around that needle, come out the stitch just like if you were going to knit. And then here's the trick. Pull it out. So I've extended it. And then I'm going to take my left-hand needle, swivel around and scoop and put that stitch on my needle. Okay, so now I have 2 stitches. Take my right-hand needle, go into the stitch I just created, yarn around my right-hand needle, come out that stitch, extend, swivel, and scoop. So in, around, out, extend, and then with my left-hand needle, I swivel and scoop. In, around, out, extend, swivel, and scoop. Now the swivel and scoop is very important. You do not want to take your left-hand needle and just stick it on there just like that, okay? We want to take this and we want to swivel and scoop it on. So that way it makes the edge down here at the bottom nice and neat. So in, around, out, extend, swivel, scoop. How's that, Allie?
That's great.
Okay.
We have had, so a couple questions that came through. Someone wants to know if you have a trick for how much yarn to use in a long tail cast on. And I think you do have a good trick.
I do. So a knit stitch is relatively a circle, correct? And we all know that the circumference of a circle is pi, 3.14. And so if you take 3 times the width of whatever you're trying to cast on. So let's say we were casting on something that was 9 inches. If we take something and we take our tail and we make it 18 inches and then add a little bit extra, theoretically, we should have enough yarn in our tail to cast on the number of stitches we need, because the amount of yarn used for each stitch will be about 3.14. So I always do 3 times the amount of whatever the width of my piece is, and then I add a little bit extra. The other thing you could do, if I'm good with this, I can show you something else you can do, is when you have the number of stitches you're supposed to cast on, kind of the same idea, take your yarn, rest it on your needle, and for every stitch you need to cast on, wrap your yarn around your needle. And so say that was the number, I always give myself a little bit extra, and then that's where I put my slip knot, and this would be my tail. So those are 2 different ways you can use it. Another way is if you have 2 balls of the same yarn and you're using a long tail cast on, use an end from each ball and make one ball the one that goes over your finger and the other ball one that goes over your thumb, and then cast on using both of them, and then cut the one that was over your thumb and just continue on with the yarn that was on your finger, and then you'll have enough yarn no matter what. So those are 3 different methods. How about that? Sound good?
That's great.
Perfect.
And Marley, just double
Yes.
checking, we are casting on 42 stitches for this pattern?
Yes, so 42 stitches is what the original dishcloth is. Because I don't want to work over 42 stitches in the video, I've done a multiple of 6 plus 12, so I have 24 stitches on my little sample here. But the one that I started off at the beginning, this one here, this one has 42 stitches.
Great, thank you.
No problem. All right, if we're good to go, conveniently, that last cast on method is very similar to the knit stitch because it's called the knitted cast on. And so we can begin knitting in the same method of what we just did
Hey, Marley, somebody has a question here, and I think it
Sure,
might be something that a lot of beginner knitters have.
sure.
Does your slip knot always count as the first stitch?
Um, Typically, yes, unless a pattern tells you otherwise, yes. Yeah, unless a pattern tells you otherwise, or you're getting in a more advanced pattern where, um, it wouldn't count, the pattern would typically tell you, or the particular technique you're using would tell you. This is different than crochet, where your slip knot doesn't count as a stitch, or the loop on your hook doesn't count as your stitch. When you're doing knitting, the slip knot does count as a stitch.
Fantastic.
Is
Thanks,
that
Marley.
good? Perfect. Okay, so I've turned my work, I've cast on, I've turned my work, and I'm supposed to knit 9 rows. And you'll notice in the pattern, it says that this first row we're doing is considered a wrong side row. And that's just something you can note. And all you're doing here is you're going into each stitch, yarning over your right hand needle, pulling out the stitch, and having it jump off. So right now I'm holding my yarn in my left hand, which is continental, and it is exactly the same motion and method as when I hold my yarn in my right hand, which would be considered English or throwing. So it's the same thing. It just happens to be that I hold my yarn in a different hand. Can you see this? Now, the first thing you'll notice as you're working down these stitches, if you have cast on your stitches too snug, it'll be very difficult to get into these stitches, especially because the yarn we're using is a cotton and it doesn't have a lot of give and there's not a lot of stretch. So because of that, you want to make sure you've cast these on nice and relatively loose, like not sloppy, but you need them to be able to move around your knitting needle. As you're knitting also, because the yarn doesn't have a lot of give, you'll notice that I am using metal needles, and the reason is because I don't want to have my needles grab onto my yarn at all and create even more resistance, because that will make my hands tired. And you know what? I like to knit. I don't want my hands to get tired. I want to be able to keep doing it. So using metal needles allows me to let these stitches move fairly freely across the needle without fighting it, like it would if you were using a wood needle. They tend to grab at your stitches a little bit more. Does that make sense so far? Oop, I didn't knit that last one. I gotta knit it. As you knit across all of those stitches, I always take a second. I straighten my stitches out just to make sure everything looks nice and neat, and then turn my work and I carry on. Does it look good so far? How's everybody doing?
People seem to be doing good.
Good.
So there is a question about how to count rows. Kathy has a question about how to count rows. I think that
Okay.
would be really helpful. Maybe, I think, as you're further along in the project, that's something that as a beginner knitter can be confusing to go back and count. So
Absolutely.
I think that would be a great
Okay.
helpful thing maybe once we have a little bit of project on the needles there.
Yeah. So when you're working in garter stitch, one thing that you could put this in your little knitter's toolbox, everybody. When you're working garter stitch back and forth, 2 rows of garter stitch create 1 ridge of garter. So when you are working on your project like so, and you're taking a peek and you're like, all right, it's hard to see on this one. Let me keep going. You take a peek and you're like, okay, I see 1 ridge. I see 2 ridges. I see 3 ridges. You know that that would count as 2 rows or 4 rows or 6 rows when you're looking at garter stitch. When you're looking at stockinette stitch, that's a little bit different. You're actually looking at the V's to know when the rows are completed, and each row represents one row, so to speak. But when you're working in garter stitch, you get this really nice sort of ridge. Can you kind of see it on this one? See how those 2 rows come together and you get a little ridge right there? You can see it better. Let me put this aside. You can see it better on this one. So this was my cast on row, and then this was my first row. And then I had 9 rows going up. So I have I have a total of 10 rows, but you can see there are 5 ridges. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you see that easily enough? And the great thing about this pattern is we have these 5 ridges and we have 5 stitches out here across, right? So it just looks really good to my eye as far as symmetry, because you have the 5 and the 5. It just looks really clean. But when you're working with rows in garter stitch, you want to find these ridges, and you can kind of separate them apart, and you can see that 2 rows are completing 1 ridge. And so as we complete this section, we're going to have a total of 5 ridges. And then when we get into the stockinette portion here, you can see we have these nice V's, which represent the knit side of a stitch. And you can easily count the V's up along the way to count your rows that way. I tend to always count my V's versus the purls. Like these are purl bumps here, and I have a hard time counting my purl bumps. I find it easier to count the V's that are nice and solid. Does that help? Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's been very helpful.
Perfect. So do you think I'd be okay to move along, or should I be patient and wait for people to catch up and get these 10 rows done? I'm kind of curious what you guys think.
A couple people have said if you could wait for a minute, that would be really helpful.
Sure, I could do that. I'll just keep knitting on this other one real quick. Not a problem. I can knit all the time. So as I'm knitting, Allie, do you have any other questions? Is there anything else that we should be mentioning out here?
Let me take a look at the questions.
Okay, and I'm gonna knit continental style as I'm going along. If I need to go back to English, have them tell me. It's literally, you guys, it's the same knitting. Everything is the same. I'm just holding my yarn in a different hand.
Robin had a question.
Sure.
Will the tail end up in the front, or am I casting on backwards? She's a lefty and trying to flip it in her head.
I don't know what she means by in the front. So when she says she's a lefty, the question there would be, does that mean she knits off of her right hand needle onto her left hand needle? Or is she a lefty as in like what I'm doing, where she knits with the yarn in her left hand? So the difference here is this. A true lefty, which is what I'm assuming she probably is where she has her stitches here and she knits from this needle onto her left needle and goes across. So this would be a lefty, or what a right-hand person would call knitting backwards. But so I need to know that. But then the other question would be, the tail itself really doesn't matter, because once we tuck this in, it's going to disappear. So I'm not sure why it matters where the tail is.
So Pamela asked, there are different ways to do knit rows. Can you show the beginner slowly where the yarn should be?
Okay, so if I come closer to the camera, is it still in frame or still in focus?
Yes,
yeah?
That looks good.
As your stitches rest on your needle, okay, so you see our stitches resting on our needle. It should rest on our needle if it's coming like this, where this leg here is in front of the back leg. Can you see what I mean by that? It should not be reversed. It should not be like this. It should be like this. So if your stitches are resting on your needle just like this, you want to go into the front leg, because you want your front leg, it's like it's stepping forward. It wants to be knit. So you go into that front leg, take your yarn, and in crochet, we would go over it like this. In knitting, you go the opposite way, okay? And that's very important, okay? We're gonna go this direction. Then we wanna take that stitch we just put on our needle, and we want to pull it through this loop that we put our needle into. So if we had a hook on there, we would just grab it and pull it through. And that's essentially what we're doing. Can you see that? If I tilt it like this, like I'm just pulling it through that stitch. So I'm going in, I'm coming around, and I'm pulling it through that stitch. Now that this loop is through that stitch, I can let this stitch fall off my needle. Okay, it's not going to go anywhere. Then I go to the next one. I go in, wrap around, come out, and off. So my beginner knitters, I always tell them, you go in the front door, around the corner, out the window, off the porch. In the front door, around the corner, out the window, off the porch. Say it with me. In the front door, around the corner, out the window, off the porch. In the front door, around the corner, through the window, off the porch. What are they saying? Is it looking good?
Oh,
everybody happy?
Sorry.
That's
so
okay.
Everyone seems to be doing pretty good. Robin, our left-handed knitter from before, I didn't want to forget about her. So she mentioned that she knits from left to right.
So she knits off her left-hand needle to the right. So she's not a left-handed knitter. She just knits with the yarn. She holds the yarn like I do then, right? Like, so she holds the yarn over here, which would be continental, because she knits off of the left to the right. And in that case, I mean, even still, it doesn't matter where her tail is. The tail will be woven in once everything is said and done.
So everyone, do we think that we're ready to move on to the next section of the pattern?
Can you guys see the ridges as they're coming on? Looking good?
I think
they're good?
A couple people, let's see. Maybe give them another minute or so.
Okay.
Minute or two.
I'm just going to keep knitting. So if people want to keep watching me knit, I will do that. And I'll just go slow. That's fine. I love knitting. When I first started knitting, Allie, I was so obsessed with it. Like I would come home from work and I would make dinner with the family, get the kids in bed, and then I would end up staying up until like 3 or 4 in the morning, taking like an hour nap, and then going back to work because I was just obsessed with it. That did not last long. I had to get some sleep finally, but I just fell in love with knitting so much. There's something really soothing about the yarn flowing through my fingers and moving off of the needles. I love it very much. And just to reiterate the way I hold my yarn, it's called continental, and it's actually the way a lot of crocheters hold their yarn because it's very similar to how we hold the crochet yarn or the crochet hook in our yarn. So a lot of crocheters will hold their yarn continental style.
Brenda wants to know, how many rows are we knitting before changing?
So you have 9 rows to knit, and then you'll be on the first row, which again is a knit row. I'll just keep going on this one, Allie. I think they want to see that, which is okay.
Awesome.
Is it looking good on camera and stuff too? I'm trying really hard to stay in frame and come close and
maybe scoot another inch to the right. Oh, that's actually better. Yeah, that's good.
That one?
Okay. Yeah, right there. That's good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I aim to please, my friend. This is fun. Again, if you find that you're struggling getting into those stitches, you could be knitting a little bit too tight. So try and relax a little bit. Let those stitches flow really easily off of your knitting needles. You don't want these to be super tight. Your hands will be very tired by the end of the project if you have your stitches too snug, okay? I'm gonna turn my work. Go ahead.
So someone had a great question, which I think is something a lot of beginners have a problem with, is the loop that hangs off at the end of each of your rows.
Mm-hmm.
How to avoid that?
You mean the kind of the larger stitch?
Mm-hmm. At the
Okay,
end of
so
a row.
let me get to the end of the row. The nature of that larger stitch is this. It doesn't have a partner on either side to hold it in place, so it likes to get a little bit wonky. But conveniently, as we knit that first stitch on the next row, we have a chance to tighten up that stitch a little bit, and I'm going to show you what I mean here. So as I come down here, I'm coming to my last stitch here. Mine is relatively tame. But as I come in here and I knit that stitch, I'm not going to stress about how kind of sloppy it might be. But when I turn my work here, when I knit this first stitch, I'm going to actually knit it, take it off. I'm going to wiggle my needle and tug my yarn. And what it does is it tightens up the stitch below. But you want to, oh, see, I'm kind of out of frame. So you move your needle, tug your yarn, and it tightens up the stitch below. And so you want to make sure you don't tighten it up too much, but that tightens up that stitch a little bit. The other thing you could do is after you knit that second stitch, give it a little bit of a tug too, and it pulls that stitch nice and snug. Okay. The last thing I would recommend is as you're knitting, notice I'm not taking my needles and pulling them apart just like this. You always want to try and keep your needles as close together as possible to not put extra stress between the stitches, okay? So you'll notice that I just have my needles nice and close together. And you'll also notice that I have my fingers up here close to the tips of my needles holding those stitches so that they don't fall off. Because I want to control my stitches. I don't want them to control me. All right. There's not many things in life I get to control. And so if I can control my stitches, even better. So you'll notice I'm always grabbing at my stitch, making sure that it's not going anywhere. And even here on my left hand, I use my middle finger to guide those stitches so they don't jump off the needle before I want them to. It's just a habit. I know that I have friends too that they have a bad habit of putting their finger here at the top of the needle and pushing. I will put my finger there, but I'm not really pushing. I'm just kind of guiding it so that way I have a hold of that yarn when it pops off. Because if you keep putting your finger there, you're going to get an owie at the end of your finger. So you want to be very careful of that. All right. I think I've done one too many rows, but I'm going to do one more row back because that would be, actually, no, I'm not. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think we're ready to move to the next section. Yeah.
Awesome. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 ridges. 1, 2, 3, 4 ridges. So I would have to go back one more time because that would give me 8 rows, right? So this would be my 9th row. So let me get my 9th row done so that we're all at the same place. I'm going to get down there. I'm going to speed through this one, all right, guys, because I've been going kind of slow. So I'm going to get this one down here. And then on the next row, that's where we begin our 12 row repeat. And conveniently, every time we're on the right side of our dishcloth, we are always going to just knit. So that makes it really easy to remember. The biggest thing is, though, that you need to remember which one is your right side. So when I turn my work here at the end, I will be looking at row 1, which is the right side of my fabric. Once again, I should have 5 ridges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you see that? I have 5 ridges. So that gives me all the rows I need. This is the right side of my fabric. So this is where I usually will take a stitch marker. I had one here, and I'll grab this one. I usually will take a stitch marker and I'll put it through the front of my fabric just so that it's a clue to me that every time I get back to the side where I'm looking at this stitch marker, I know I'm looking at the right side where I know I'm just on a knit row. I don't have to do anything special. All the special stitches for this pattern happen on the wrong side. Okay, so that stitch marker there is purely just for me. We're going to add a couple more stitch markers here because if you follow me at all on YouTube, you know I love stitch markers because I tend to forget things, and so stitch markers help me remember. So we're going to talk about that. So here we are, we're jumping into the pattern. This is our right side. We have to knit this row. Perfect. We've been knitting all along. We know how to do this. So let's knit this row and get down to the other side. How we doing, Allie?
Oh, we're doing really good.
Good.
There's definitely some people who have been asking, you know, if they're knitting a little bit slower or, you know, a beginner and really just are kind of absorbing everything you're talking about. Yes, this video will be available to everybody. The recording will be available and you'll be able to watch it back at your own speed and follow along.
Absolutely. That's always convenient. All right, so I'm at the end of row 1. I will turn my work, and this is where we begin row 2. And this is where I am going to introduce 2 more stitch markers. I'm going to grab some stitch markers here from, look at this, I have a huge pile of stitch markers. So it's like, which ones do you want, Marley? Let's just grab a couple smaller ones here. Okay. We start off row 2 with a knit 5. So I'm going to knit 5 stitches. Nothing special, nothing spectacular. These 5 stitches are going to always be knit throughout the pattern because that's going to be our garter stitch along the edge of our fabric, right? So this garter stitch out here, those are these 5 stitches that we're creating right now. So these 5 stitches represent our garter stitch border. So this is why I want to add a marker there. And that marker is purely for me to know that, hey, Marley, you want to make sure these are always knit. And when I get over here to this side, I'm going to add another marker so that I know, hey, Marley, make sure you always knit those last 5. Okay? So even though this marker is not in the pattern, I recommend it if you're somebody who often forgets this stuff like me. Once you knit those 5, I place my marker. Then we want to move our yarn to the front of our needles. So notice, I'm going to do this in throwing. Our yarn was in back because we were knitting. I want to take my yarn, come between my needles to the front. Now I'm going to purl to the last 5 stitches. So my yarn is in front. Notice I take my needle, my right hand needle. I'm going through the front leg this time. So I'm going through the front door. I am going to go over top of my right hand needle and down. Okay, I'm going to do that again because this is very important. Instinctively, we're like, oh, if I wrap it this way, that makes it easier to pull through. I'm going to do it like that. Well, if we do that, the stitch will rest on our needle incorrectly, and so we don't want to do that. You want to take your yarn and wrap it over top of your right hand needle. Can you guys all see that? You get what I'm saying here? I'm going to show it in this position. So my yarn is in front. My right hand needle is through the front leg. I'm going to take my yarn and go over top of the right hand needle. Now I treat it just like anything else. I'm going to pull that needle through the stitch and off the porch. We're going to do it again. Through the front door, around the corner, out the window, off the porch. Through the front door, around the corner, through the window, off the porch. Through the front door, around the corner, through the window, off the porch. How's everybody doing with that? This one's a little tricky. It seems a little difficult, and I want you to be patient with yourself if you've never done a purl stitch before, because your mind and your hands, you've never done this. So give yourself some slack. This will take a little bit of time for your brain to teach your hands the muscle memory to do this stitch. And it's okay. If you fumble with it a couple times, it's absolutely okay. Just take a minute and repeat after me. In the front door, around the corner, through the window, off the porch. Through the front door, around the corner, through the window, off the porch. If I hold it like this, is this going to be easier? Through the front door, around the corner, through the window, off the porch. Is everybody really quiet, Allie? Are they liking it? What are they saying?
I think people are doing all right. I know that there has been a couple of kind of video quality issues, just not on your end, but I think that
just the internet.
Yeah. So just reminding everyone that the class will be recorded and available to rewatch. So you shouldn't have any quality issues when you're rewatching the recording. I think that some people probably could just stand to, I think a lot of people are finding that they might need to rewatch it. There are a decent amount of people. But I think a lot of people are doing really good.
Awesome. All right. So at the end of row 2, when you get down to the last 5 stitches, remember I have fewer stitches than you do. When you get to the last 5 stitches, that's where I'm going to take my second marker, place it on my right hand needle, and then I'm going to knit these last 5 stitches. So if I'm going to knit, I need to move the yarn between my needles. So let me get my yarn here, move it between my needles, back to the back, and now I can knit these stitches. And again, those markers are purely there to remind me, hey, silly, make sure you keep these stitches as knits, because inevitably I will accidentally purl them. Always. I always do. Okay? At the end of the row, you turn your work. We're back to a right side. How do I know that? Because I put my marker there. Hey, let's give a hallelujah for the marker. And we know that every time we see that marker, we're on a knit row. So we just knit. We don't have to do anything spectacular. It's almost like it's a relief row, right? So I go into the stitches and I just knit them. When I come to those markers, you really don't have to do anything special. You simply slip them over to your right hand needle. I'm not very good at throwing, but I try. So here's my marker. I slip it over, don't do anything else, and I just keep on knitting. I'm going to hold my yarn in my other hand.
Zebra wanted to know when you should start purling, at what row, and I'm just confirming. So on the second row is the first row that you will start purling.
Exactly. Yep. If you're looking at the pattern, you'll notice on row 2, it says knit 5, purl to the last 5 stitches, and then knit 5. And then I just did row 3, which is a right side row, which is always just knit. And if you pause here at the end of this row, you'll be able to start to identify how the stockinette is peeping out above all of those garter ridges. Can you guys see all those stockinette, those V's right there? And those were the purls on the opposite side. And on this side, they look like V's. They look like knits. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when I turn my work here, I'll be on row 4, and that's where the pattern stitch really comes in. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to mention that, say you've gotten to this point, you're like, okay, this is cool, but as Marley is showing more and more of this, it seems like it might be a little bit too much for me. I want to tell you, you could just continue on repeating rows 1 and 2. until it measures about 8 inches. You could do that where you just have stockinette in the center and garter stitch on the side. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I've gotten to row 4 and I just can't continue. No, 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 that's not the case. You can keep going. You can just keep repeating rows 1 and 2. And then maybe on your next dishcloth, you feel more confident and you give it a try again. So I don't want you to be discouraged at all. There's no room for discouragement in any of this. Say you've gotten to this point and you're like, those purls are just a little bit too tough for me, Marley. What's another option? You could just continue purely doing garter stitch through the entire dishcloth, where you just have a garter stitch dishcloth. You don't have to do stockinette at all. So you still have a chance to have a wonderful project as well. So see, you are a winner no matter what, as long as you can get those knits down, all right? So for all of you who are ready to jump to row 4, where we are going to combine knits and purls within the same row and in a stitch pattern, we're going to jump in, okay? All right, so here we go. I'm going to turn my work. And we are starting row 4 here. And so I'm moving, I like to move my stitch markers back so that they're always facing me. And again, those stitch markers let me know, hey, Marley, these are supposed to be knits. I also can see that in the pattern. I'm supposed to knit 5. So I will knit 5 stitches. Which brings me to my marker conveniently, so I can slip my marker. Now you'll see it says to purl 2. So I want to take my yarn, bring it between my needles back to the front, and I'm going to purl 2 stitches. Remember, I go into the front door, go around the corner, out the window, off the porch. So that's 1 in the front door, around the corner, out the window, off the porch. I want to pause here and I want you to take a look at your pattern. Notice in the pattern, there's an asterisk right next to the next part of the instructions. That asterisk, or the star, represents a place in your pattern that you will repeat from. And this is true on all patterns, okay? So that's why I'm taking a minute to point that out, especially for those of you who've never really looked at a pattern before. This is important. This next set of instructions, or these next set of instructions, the knit 4 and then purl 2, and then it says repeat from star to the last 5 stitches. That means across your dishcloth, you will keep repeating knit 4, purl 2, knit 4, purl 2, knit 4, purl 2, all the way to the last 5 stitches. So that's what we're going to do here. What we have to remember though is when we knit, we have to bring our yarn to the back. We knit 4. Bring our yarn between our needles to the front and purl 2. So that was 1 repeat. Now we have to do it again. Bring our yarn between our needles to the back, knit 4, bring our yarn between our needles to the front, purl 2. Now remember, I have a smaller number of stitches than you do. So I am already to my last 5 stitches, which happens to be where my marker is too, convenient. So I can move my marker over. Then I want to take my yarn, go between my needles back to the back, and finish up with a knit 5. Whew, how's that feel? So as you take a look at your work right now from this side without turning, it's not going to look like much has happened. But when you turn your work, you will notice that those knit 4s you created represent purl bumps on this side. Can you see that? Okay. So Here we are, we're back to a row 5, which represents a right side row. So we're just going to knit this row. How we doing, everybody? Everybody still with me?
People are doing great.
Awesome.
Monica had a great comment. She said, great class. I wouldn't have the motivation to do this if it weren't for your class. Have to go to a work meeting right now. Thanks.
All right, well, fantastic. I'm happy. That makes me happy. I just want to make sure everybody feels accomplished. You know what I mean? I mean, if you could walk away from this class having learned one thing, whether it was the long tail cast on, the knitted cast on, how to hold your yarn continental, how to hold your yarn as if to throw, how to knit, how to purl, what does it mean to garter stitch? How do you count garter stitch rows? What does it mean to stockinette? How do you count stockinette stitch rows? How do you go from a knit to a purl? How do you use stitch markers? How do you read a pattern with a star? I mean, there's a lot. Hey, that's a lot of bang for your buck, people. I'm loving it. Okay, so I'm coming up here, and you just treat these stitch markers as nothing. You just slip them aside. They're purely there for you to remember. Now, here's the cool thing. When you get to the end of the row and turn your work, you are now on row 6. And row 6 is a repeat of row 4. So there's nothing new to learn here on row 6, but I am going to pause for a second and make a suggestion. So because I lose track of what rows I'm on and I don't want to spend all my time counting my rows, I like to use a Post-it note and a pen, and I will make tick marks every time I complete a row. So you'll see up here, this was actually started for this little swatch right here. But for every row I completed, I made a tick mark. And you'll notice I put the number 12 out here. And that number 12 represents the number of rows in my repeat. So I know that every time I get to 12 tick marks, I'm done with a full row repeat and it's time for me to go back to row 1. So then that's where I would start down here and I would do another 12 tick marks. And once I get to 12, I would start again. Does that make sense? Now, one thing that I always do is I mark my tick mark after my row is complete. And you want to make sure that whatever you do, you're consistent with it. Because say I set my work down to go answer the door or go grab a drink or something. When I come back, if I've lost place of where I am in the pattern, I don't want to look at my tick mark calculator counter and think to myself, well, does that mean I finished a row 5 or I'm on row 5? If I'm always consistent and I know that that tick mark represents a finished row 5, I always know where I am in the pattern. Does that make sense? So I like to use Post-it notes. I know other people like to actually mark it on the pattern. You can do that as well. If you're a fan of an app or a stitch counter like thing that you can use, you feel free to do that. I never got into those because I had young kids when I first started to learn to knit, and they would get a hold of those little row counters and they would turn them, and then I never knew where I was. So I can easily identify my own tick marks, but if somebody's turning that counter, I don't know what to do. So that is a big suggestion right there, is make sure you make a tick mark of where you are in the pattern. All right, so here we go. We're doing row 6, which is a repeat of row 4. So we already know what to do on this row. And I'm gonna hold my yarn in my left hand this time so that those of you who are continental knitters and purlers can see how to do these stitches with it in your left hand. So I'm knitting across the 5 stitches. Slip my marker. Now I will bring my yarn between my needles, purl 2. So there's 1. Notice it's the same motion, guys. Do you see that? I'm in the stitch, I go around the needle, out the stitch, off the porch. So I purl 2, bring my yarn between my needles back to the back, and I knit 4. Between my needles to the front, purl 2. Oops. Between my needles to the back, knit 4. Did I get off count here? purl 2, no, knit 4, duh. Okay. Come forward and then purl 2. Bring my yarn back to the back, slip my marker or slip your marker and move your yarn, doesn't matter. And then knit the last 5 stitches. Again, if you look at it from the side we just finished or from the wrong side, it doesn't look like much. But when we turn our work, you're going to see those nice ridges there, those purl bumps. Those are actually garter ridges. And you have some nice looking stitches happening here. Can you see that?
Yeah,
all right,
that looks great.
Awesome. So I'm going to make my little tick mark because I just finished row 6. And I know I'm on row 7, which is just knitting. So it's kind of, like I said, it's like my rest row. It's my reprieve. More often than not, when I was making the dishcloth, if I had to get up and go do something, I always finished one of the wrong side rows. So that way, when I came back, I was on a knit row. So I didn't have to think about it too much. I don't know. These are the little things I think about.
I think people really enjoy, so far, it seems like people really picked up a whole lot of tricks and tips here, Marley.
Perfect.
Again, just reminding everybody that the class will be available. The recorded version of this class will be available online tomorrow.
Perfect. Can I mention one thing before they go? Because this is
Yeah.
an important thing here. Let me get to the end of this row because it coincides with these stitch markers because they could be like, what's going on? When you start the next section of patterns, because remember it's a 12 stitch pattern. So the next section, oh, I just unknit that last one. Starting with row 8, your stitch pattern is going to change slightly. So that way it offsets those bumps. And you'll notice that the pattern is written to start off with a knit 8. And you might say, wait, Marley, you have a marker here. I can't knit 8, there's a marker. No, you can knit 8. You'll knit the 5, slip your marker, and then knit your 3. And then you'll notice it says knit, follow the pattern down to the last 4 stitches. And you might be like, wait, Marley, you have a marker here. I'm missing a stitch. I don't have 4 stitches. Well, no, you do. Slip your marker. That 4th stitch will be the first one after the marker. And then you'll knit your last 4. So your markers still stay in place and the stitch count works, but it just seems deceptive because it's not like knit 5, slip your marker, knit 3. They combined it and it's knit 8. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
this makes sense.
I want to make sure because I mean it's something that trips up people, and so I don't want them to be tripped up. But as I get here, so there's my 5, slip my marker. And then I would just knit my 3 more. And then I jump into my pattern, which would be purl 2 and then knit 4. And so my last knit 4 then would come down here and that last 4th one would be right there, okay? So as you continue on doing that, so you've learned all the stitches, you know all the stitches you need to use for this particular stitch pattern. When you get through all 12 rows, this is what it looks like. This is full 12 rows of the pattern. So it's at this point, I would repeat my rows 1 through 12 and continue on until it measures about 8 inches, ending either with a row 6 or a row 12. Then I go back to just garter stitch for 8 rows, and then I bind off. Do you want me to show them how to bind off real quick?
I think Yes.
Okay. Just, I mean, they can get there. All right, so I'll just show it on this one. So we're gonna pretend. Let's put our imagination station hats on. Okay. So we're gonna pretend we're at the start of our last row to bind off. We're gonna knit 2 stitches. Take our left hand needle, stick it into that first stitch, have it jumping over the second stitch. Then you knit 1 more. Take that first stitch, jump up and over the second. Knit again. First stitch. Jumps up and over the second. Notice those stitches are getting bound off. When all is said and done, and you do that all the way down your row, your stitches are nice and bound off at the very end. And then you just take your tapestry needle and weave in your ends here. You can add a knot. And because it is a cotton yarn, the knot is not going to go anywhere. It's going to just stay in place. So add your knot, weave in your ends, give your dishcloth the good wash, and then you're ready to use it. that good? I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was so much fun to teach. I hope all of you will take the time to give this a try. And like I said, if you're struggling with the purls and you just want to knit the whole thing, you can. If you're struggling with the combination of the knits and purls and you just want to have stockinette in the center, you could do that as well. It's totally up to you. You can achieve success with this. And at the end of the day, it's just sticks and string. Give yourself a break. All right, guys. All right, so I'm Marley Bird. This was the Michaels Community Online Learning class. The name completely left me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you let Michaels know that this is something fun. You would like to do this again, and I would love to have you guys hang around with me a little bit more. So you can find me online. I'm Marley Bird, just about everywhere. So that's it for me, everybody. Unless there's anything else, Amy. Oh, okay, cool, Al.
Thanks, Marley.
Thanks, Marley. This is Katie from Michaels. Just so everyone knows, we loved having you guys. We appreciate all your time. And we've got classes almost daily now at 12 o'clock, free sign up. So if you go to michaels.com/classes, you can sign up for all of our different classroom events that we've got going on. And every Thursday right now, we are focusing on yarn. So knit and crochet, get excited on Thursdays.
Love me some yarn.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.